Hey everyone, Jackie here from Full Moon Loon Designs. I was planning on using my GoPro this evening to set up some video while I did a slurry / freeze infuse process, but there's the GoPro sitting there. I can't seem to get it to work, and I don't know if this is a new iOS 11 thing. If anybody has one and you are having the same issue, I'd be curious what's going on if you've figured it out. But every time I connect to my GoPro's Wi-Fi, it just switches to LTE. So at any rate, that aside, I will just do a few still photos and a few video shots, but what I'm going to start with is just kind of what we need. So definitely working with powders, you want some safety gear. I have safety glasses as well. I'm going to wear this respirator when I do this. I've got a spoon for scooping out powders. I've got, sorry, this is not the GoPro, so it's a little more awkward. I've got some clear cups for mixing. I've got some clean water. By all means, I don't advocate using a bunch of water bottles. I just happen to have some on hand that we had left over from the cabin this summer. But you know, if you have good water, if it's filtered, it'll work fine. I've never used distilled or anything for these as far as freeze infuse or slurry. And then I've got a variety of powders. And what I'm going to do today, originally what I wanted to do was to use a piece of clear luminescent as my base, and I will have paper down. I can show you. I've already cut a piece of papyrus to fit my mold. So that's there. Now, I'm not using luminescence, so why am I using paper? A couple reasons. One, I haven't treated this mold yet with zip, just because I have been only using it with the luminescent and papyrus. But you know what I figured is if I have papyrus on hand, this is a great way to avoid having to clean up that zip residue. So I'm going to go ahead and use paper. I did cut a piece of clear glass, and I cut it just under 9 inches. I know I can go about 9 1/4. I'll show you here. I apologize, this is not the best quality video going here, but hopefully I'll be able to get the point across. So you can see I've done even smaller ones. If you saw my offset snowflake project, that one was, I believe, a 6-inch bowl, and I just did it off to the side. This one's 9-inch clear, but what I'm going to do is a little twist on the slurry technique. I bought a 9-inch cake pan that's silicone. Funny thing is it's not 9 inches across at the bottom. So even though I've cut my glass 9 inches, I'm going to make it work. We're going to see what happens. But anyway, what I'm going to do is very similar to when you do a freeze infuse technique. I'm going to mix up some of my slurries of frit and water, or I'm sorry, powdered frit and water. And I'm going to put them in here, and I'm going to use a variety of blues, and I've got some clear there. I don't think I wanted the clear. That's my clear for sifting when I need it. But I've got some white powder. So I'm going to use a mixture of blues and whites. I'm going to kind of marble them in this pan here, the slurry technique. But then the twist is I'm going to do it like a freeze infuse. So I'm going to take this up to the freezer. We'll check on it in about an hour, and it should be, solid. I'll do it just like I do freeze infuse. I'll get the extra water out of there. And once that's ready, my thought was I would take this sheet of glass, excuse the camera view here, and I would put it over it, flip that slurry onto it. It should pop out of there. I was a little worried about using a more just a plastic. I have some stepping stone molds, but I'm afraid the bigger mass of this may crack as it is. I'm not sure if it will. If it does, it's not going to be the end of the world. I'll just spray a little water on it. But what I'm going to do is freeze some powder in here. So I'll take some pictures as I go, and in the end, this will all be compiled into one longer video with some pictures and some instructions, and probably a firing schedule. But just to kick it off tonight, I just wanted to have something quick to post and to let you know that I am working on it, but my GoPro is not cooperating, so I'm not very happy right now. But I'm happy because I get to play with glass. So more to come soon. Thanks. As I was preparing the colors I'm going to use for this project, I thought I would share a quick tip. if you haven't worked with weighing out powders, and I don't know that I need to weigh them, but I was trying to make an estimate of how much I would need. And I was more or less going by the theory of using the same weight of glass, a little more. So I did weigh my piece of glass, and when I put that on, basically I set my cup on here because the glass is a little bigger than the scale, it just makes it easier. I'm going to tear the scale, zero it out, set the glass on here, and I believe it was right around a little over 300 pounds, yeah, 300 grams. That would be a huge piece of glass. It is 308, so we'll just, you know, give or take, I'll say 300. So I thought I would shoot for around 400 grams of powder because I'm not exactly sure if I need the same ratio I do when I do sheet glass. Again, we're learning this as we go, right? So the colors that I'm using tonight, I have used 100 grams of white, 100 grams of my lighter, this is actually Riviera Blue Opal, and then 100 grams of the medium, nope, I take that back, that's dark blue. So I've got 100 grams each of those, and then in with that I've got 50 grams of sapphire blue and 50 grams of aventurine blue. And I really just wanted a little bit of aventurine. If you've worked with that, you know it has a nice little sparkle to it. What I thought I would show you is how, if you haven't weighed out frit or powder before, I'll set what I'm going to use on the scale and tear it out. I happen to know these are 12 grams. As you can see there, as soon as I removed it, it said 12. Another little tip, write down your tear, because a lot of times while you're working, your scale may shut off. Sometimes it remembers where it was at, sometimes it doesn't. I think it may have to do with where the battery level is on mine. But anyway, I set my vessel there, I zero it out, and then I just took a spoon and put my powders into the cup. So more to come once I get the waters added and start pouring this in. I'll take some pictures and some video, but for now I just wanted to share about measuring out the powders and how much I'm going to use on this project. Thanks. I'm back and I'm not ready to pour it into the pan yet. I just wanted to show you, this was not even a minute ago that I set this cup over here. And if you've worked with Slurry or Freeze Infuse, you know how quickly it will settle. So good news is I can just pour off some of this water and still have a good slurry consistency. This one is probably closer to what I want. It started to settle. Nope, this one's still a little bit too runny as well. But again, you want it to be, it's hard to describe if you haven't done one before. You want it to be able to be a slurry, something you can spoon into the mold or drop into the mold or onto your glass. This can certainly be done straight on the glass. I'm just doing it a little differently this time. But you don't want it so liquidy that if I poured these all in there, all I would get was just one massive mess of a color. Since they're all blues, it would probably be some shade of blue, but it probably wouldn't come out like I want it to. So I want to be able to plop some different sections in there and maybe pour a couple of colors in at the same time. Won't be able to do the video while I'm doing that step, but I'll certainly take pictures and show as I can. This one is looking like it might be a nice consistency of slurry. Just a little water standing on the top, as you can see. Hopefully you can see as I'm mixing that. Now, I'll mix it right before I pour it in, and it does have, it's still got a little too much water in it, but getting there. Consistency of slurry. And what I did was that last shot where I showed the water had risen to the top, I poured all that excess off. As you can see, it's already settling again. But I'll show you on another one here. I've got my aventurine. There's still a little excess there. I'm just going to pour it into my cup here. And once you get it to where there's no excess pouring off, you can see it kind of looks like mud in there. That's the consistency you want. At least that's what's worked for me. So that's what we're going to go with today. So I've added my first color. I believe this one was the Riviera Blue. Yep, that's the Riviera Blue Opal. Looks a little messy there. It's going to get better. I'm getting ready to add the white one here. I'm going to see if I can maybe set my phone down and catch part of this. Here you can see it settles really quick. Some of you have probably done slurries before, but this is a really good consistency. And all I'm doing is just kind of plopping it down. I'll show you once I get it in here. I don't really want to pour it all on top of each other, but I will try to marble them once I get them in here. Reason I'm using more of the lighter blue and the white is I don't want the dark colors to really overpower this, and they could. And by the way, don't throw out any slurry leftovers you have in your cups like this. You can certainly just let them sit and dry, and you've just got powder again. So I have my aventurine, or no, I'm sorry, that's the sapphire. I have my aventurine. I'm going to add a little bit of this. This one actually needs a little bit more water, and I'm going to have to give it some of my drinking water because I'm using my... And when I say a little bit, I just added too much. It's really a fun little game trying to figure out what you need here. So again, too much. I'm gonna let it sit. While that one's doing that, I'm going to mix up my dark blue. Yeah, this one's dark blue transparent. If I can get that into camera range here. Sorry, it's not the best camera angle. Working with what I got tonight. I'm not too worried about mixing colors on my stir stick here because they're all blue other than the white. And they're all getting mixed together anyway. This one I may not use all of what I've got mixed up here, but we'll see what we get here. Thinking I may actually want to add more white, or maybe even add some clear. I haven't decided yet. But this one is a transparent. I really wanted to have kind of a mix of opals and transparents for this. And right now I've got a majority of my pan, I'll show you, has the opals. So right now I have Riviera blue and white in there. So I really kind of want to start filling in those gaps with a transparent, and I think that's what I'm going to do right now with this blue. Once I get it to the right consistency. Drop some around. Okay to mix some of your colors. And I'm going to save what I've got left in there to drop here and there throughout. The other one I have that's a transparent is the sapphire blue. I'm going to pour off my excess water and stir it up. Of course, I just contaminated it with darker blue, but again, they're all getting mixed in here together anyway. Hopefully you can see that. And the camera goes crazy. That's okay, I can show you what I got here. Looking like a big mess, but guarantee you it's going to look better before I put it in the freezer. My thought was once I get the colors in here, I'm going to spray it all down with a spray bottle to kind of even it out, and then maybe marble it a bit. So this is another transparent. Just going to fill in a few places. My aventurine I'm really going to add last. So look at this. Here's what we have so far. And you can see how the water wants to rise to the top. This is a point now where I think I can start playing and maybe swirl a little. See, it's not even quite wet enough to do that. I'm going to spray a little water in here. The nice thing about doing this in the pan, or what I think is nice, is I don't have the mess that you do when you do this just on a piece of glass. So I'm going to try to maybe drag a few colors about. They're not moving too well. I'm going to add a little more water. Now, if you've done freeze infuse, you know that you get all the excess water out, and I'll still do that. But to make my actual design here, I kind of need that liquid. I really wish my GoPro was working for me tonight. This would be so much easier to share. So please don't butcher me with comments that my video is really sucky, because I know this is not the best. It's really just the technique I'm trying to share, not my video editing skills or shooting skills. So you can see that's starting to take some neat color there. I'm going to mix up this aventurine and add that, and then I'm going to get some pictures. So here I've got all my colors in there. I poured aventurine in kind of liquidy just here and there, and I moved some stuff about. At this point, I'm doing what I do when I do a freeze infuse now, tapping this to get any excess water to come to the top. I am going to use some paper towel and tissue to soak the excess off, and then I'm going to put it into the freezer. Hopefully you can see that. I think it's going to be really cool looking when it comes out. It kind of looks messy now. This is one of those things where there's really no wrong way to mix your colors. Well, you don't want to mix them all together. I will say that. You'll just get a weird color of brown. But you can swirl, you can try to make some patterns. I've only done a couple of these, so I'm not an expert at it by any means. But if you check, I believe on the CPI site, they've got a slurry technique video, or I'm sorry, a tutorial. There's probably some stuff, I'm sure there's stuff on their Facebook group as well if you belong to that, because that was a big thing. I know last year a lot of folks were doing slurries, so I'm just doing a little twist on it. I'm going to do the slurry and freeze it. So here you can see we've got some excess water there, but when I take the excess off, I'll give you another look. I don't have a great way to set up my camera to try this, but I have taken this out of the freezer. I have a clean piece of sheet glass here next to it. Because it doesn't quite fit, I'm just going to try to loosen this. It does feel like it's one nice big patty. Look at that. Oh, look at that. Cool, cool, cool. I don't know which side I like better. All right, and it's definitely not fitting the glass as I suspected. Get a better shot here. So there's that side, and I'm not gonna pick it up now because I'll probably destroy it, but let me see if I can lift it from underneath. Or show it from underneath. It's not showing very well. So here's my piece of frozen slurry that was too small for my base glass. I could have just cut a smaller piece of base glass, and I probably should have, but I really did want to try to stick with a 9-inch piece, so I thought I would just add some frit around the edges. No idea how this is going to come out. I've got a combination of coarse and medium and even a little bit of fine. I used some coarse light blue, some medium cobalt blue, which is an opal. The light blue is transparent. And then I had a little bit of mix from another project. I think it was when I did Minion jeans. It's a aventurine and white together, fine. So I've added that around the edges, and I'm actually going to sift some powder to just kind of even it out. The little bit of OCD in me can tell that I didn't get it centered quite right. I've got a little more of a rim on one side than the other. But you know what? This is really just an experiment to try this frozen slurry. So here we go. We'll see what happens. Hi, Hi, this is Jackie from Full Moon Loon Designs, and I'm going to try with the GoPro today to go through a process I was testing out yesterday. So I do have a piece of this in the kiln and I've been watching it this morning. But basically I am creating a slurry slash freeze infuse. So I'm creating my slurry. I'm going to put it into a mold. I bought, these are little stepping stone molds, and yesterday the one I did was in a silicone cake mold. Popped out beautifully when frozen, and I'll share pictures later in the process and when I edit this video. But what you're going to need is some powders, and I've got a variety of powders. The first piece I'm going to do is going to be blues. I did that yesterday, so I had a little bit left over. And one thing I wanted to do to know, I've already cut my glass the size that I know I need for my base glass, is I like to weigh my glass and see where it is, and these were around 150. This one's right about 150 grams. I'm going to go a little more than that with my powder layer, so I figured 200 grams of powder on this one. So what I did was I've already weighed out 75 grams. Sorry, that's not with the tare. When you're using your scale, you want to tare it out. These are typically 12 grams. I'm going to go ahead and clear that. Oh, my scale's being finicky today. Alright. So I was shooting for 75. It's close enough. In this, I just happened to have enough aventurine left over last night that I wanted to do 25 grams of that. Yeah, it's showing 26. And then I'm going to use 100 of white. So I wanted white and blue, this medium blue, to be my main colors, and then a little aventurine mixed in. And the twist with this one is I'm also going to use, I've mixed up some mica. This is some interference blue from Kaiser Glass, and I've mixed it with their A14 medium. I love these little, it's a worm blower bottle. You can find them in the fishing tackle section. They're great for, I use them for my hairspray that I use as glue all the time, but they have a nice needle tip, and I'll show you what I'm going to do with that shortly here. But anyway, I still need to weigh out my my white. So I've tared out this container, and you really wouldn't need to tare it if you were only doing one or two. You just take into account, but sometimes the scale will shut off while you're using it, or while you're not using it, and you're going from color to color. Also, if I'm doing multiple colors like I will be, it's nice to know what your tare is. I've written down 12 on here. That's typically where it's at. But before I start playing with powder, I want to stress safety. I'm using a respirator today, and I also have on safety glasses because this stuff can fly, especially when you're stirring the slurry. I had a little bit splatter up last night, so it's a good thing I had on safety glasses. So with that, I'm going to gear up, and then I'm going to scoop out some powder. This is another reason I measured most of mine before starting the video, because it's difficult probably for you to hear me through this. And I'm going for about 100. All right. I am going to lift my respirator while I talk through this, and actually I may leave it up when I add the water here. I'm using, you don't need to have distilled. I don't think you need to have distilled. I have filtered water from our tap. I just happen to have some water bottles left over from the summer, so that's the only reason why I have bottled water here. I don't need to use the scale for this part. I'm going to add the water to my powder. Again, you really should be wearing your safety gear because it can fly up. I'm going to stay back. I've got some stir sticks. So if you can see that right now, it's nowhere near enough water. And if you've done this process, you know that it seems like a really quick churn from not enough to way too much. But I'll show you what to do if you get too much. We'll just let some settle. Right now, not enough, so we're going to add a little more. This actually is a pretty good slurry consistency. It's going to settle a little bit because I need to set it aside while I show you what I'm going to do with this mica in the bottle. So I have the stepping stone molds, and for one of them I'm just going to do my slurry in here, freeze it, pop it out onto my base glass. And then I'm going to fire that onto a texture mold. I'm going to use the Holly one. So that one I'm going to do later. I'm going to do that with reds and greens. But the one I'm working on now, same stepping stone mold. I believe these were called the brick molds. I am going to use a piece of, if you've ever seen these, they're available in the cake decorating sections. And it's a texture mat. And I know that my glass is probably not going to maintain texture. At first I thought that would be really neat if it did, but at the temp I'm going to go for full fusing, I'm not expecting that. But I did, however, think it would be cool to fill in some of these swirls. I'm not going to do all of them, because I'm going to use a snowflake mold with my blue powders, my blue frit slurry. So I kind of made a mess of it, but I hot glued a piece of that and I cut it. And this particular mold is a 4x8. I cut both my glass and the little mat here just under that, about 3 7/8 by 7 7/8. Just want to get this glue out of here so it doesn't end up in my frit slurry. Yeah, it's probably alright. Anyway, I've hot glued that down to the base, and now what I want to do, before I start adding my glass, I just thought it would be fun to add, shake this up a bit. Thought it would be fun to add some swirls. And I've got the side, there's a side that's raised and a side that's imprinted or impression. So I've got the impression side, and I'm just going to take this and kind of follow some of these swirls with my mica. It may move about as I add my slurry. I'm kind of expecting that a little bit. I've got the wrong angle here by my light. I'm not following my swirls very well. I think if I set it down, here we go. Ah, and then that can happen. Okay, squeezing the bottle a little too hard. But you know what we could do is we could actually make that work. I'll take a paintbrush, push it around, and then maybe pick up a little bit of the excess. Let's try that. I could do a second take of this, but you know what? These are the kinds of things that happen sometimes. So as you can see, actually this might even work better. It's going down into the grooves. And my thought is when I put my slurry in here, it's going to pick that up. And mica's only going to stick, it's only going to fuse and show where it actually adheres to the glass anyway. And I know that the interference colors don't like to be capped, is what I was told, so luckily I didn't lose all that. So what I'm going to do is my powder side that's down, my slurry side, will actually be the top of the glass. So this will be on the top. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work. We're going to just try it and see. Kind of my attitude with this. Just grabbing a paper towel. Let's see if we can kind of wipe off the excess here. Yeah, maybe I should have just started it this way instead of trying to be precise. That's what happens when you try to be precise sometimes. Alright, so there I have a lovely blue mica coated texture base, and now I am going to mix up these slurries and start adding them. I have my white, as you saw I already mixed that one, and you can see that the water has settled to the top. When you're doing slurries or freeze infuse, if you get too much water in there, all you gotta do is just pour some of that off. Probably don't have too much in. I may actually have to add that back in. But what I'm going to do is I'm just going to plop this in a few places. I did this yesterday with the one that's in the kiln now. Yeah, see, I think I do want that water in there. That was just a demonstration to show if you are mixing it up and you get too much water, it's not a problem. This powder will settle, and as you're working with these and you set them aside to work on different colors, you'll have to keep mixing them up. You really got to mix them right up to the point of putting them into your mold. So I am just going to, hopefully I'm not blocking all of this. We'll be adding much more of this. I'm just want to leave room for my other colors so it's not totally white. And I don't even know why or what made me think to freeze the slurry, but I thought this would make it easier to contain it so it's not running off the side of my glass. It's much less messy of a process this way. So that's all I'm going to put in there right now for my white. Here I have my blue. Again, I need to add water. Trusty stir stick. A little too thick initially here. Add just a touch more, and this is where even just a tiny bit will probably be too much. That was probably too much. Yeah, see how quickly it goes to super runny. That's okay. For this application, actually that's fine because I kind of want to marble them and let them run about. I'll be soaking up the excess water. So now I'm just going to start kind of pouring this. But I still want to leave some openings there because I want to get my aventurine in there so it shows. So again, I'm going to set that aside. I'm going to reconstitute this. And I mentioned yesterday, if you caught the little short video I just posted on my Facebook page, as you're doing slurries, if you have leftovers at the end, you know, you have that little bit in the cup. These, I'm actually, even this one had a different color blue in there, which is fine for this project. Just let them sit and let the water evaporate out and you've got your powder again. It might be a little moist, but if you're going to make more slurries, you definitely, it's fine to leave it sit. Camera angle, you can't really see that, but you can already see where the water, the excess water is starting to surface to the top or rise to the top. That one I am pouring a little bit off. So now I'm going to, this almost reminds me of all the paint pouring stuff I'm seeing people do. I really want to try that, but I'm afraid to give up that many paints to do that. Try that as a process. It's one thing this next year I want to get better at sharing with videos, get more comfortable with my GoPro. And so if there's things you would like to see demonstrated, obviously if it's something that I've gone and paid good money for a class, I'm going to respect that teacher. I'm not going to just show you how to do that. I encourage everyone to take classes when you can, because not only is it great for the learning, it's a great networking opportunity with other artists. You really learn and you inspire each other. So anytime you have a chance to take a class, do it. So now I've got some more of my blue. Hopefully you can see this. It's just kind of a mess right now. and that's okay. Remix up my white. This could be a very interesting piece on either side. One side's going to be down against the snowflakes, which is probably going to be the side that you're not seeing right now, because that'll be the top side where I want that mica to show. So it doesn't really matter at this point. I just want to make sure there's not, you know, just definite lines between the colors. You know, I want them to flow together. I'm actually going to add more water once they're in here, and I guess you could kind of call this a cold raking process. Get as much of this out as I can. And again, I won't waste what's left in there. That'll get reused. So now, I'm going to do like I do a cake. I'm just going to kind of, I don't know if we can take a peek underneath. I don't want to tip it too much. At this point, I'm going to take a spray bottle of water. Actually, my excess water is running to the top. But this is where the more water you have, the more you can drag it around. You can use a needle tip. See, I can't even see my aventurine. I might actually add a little more. Although this will be the bottom of the piece, so yeah, see, this tool doesn't work too well for stirring. I do have, maybe use a razor tip. And you could really get creative with swirling and that. You can see I got a lot of aventurine right there. Get some of that to show through. All right. Now, like a freeze infuse, I'm going to tap this on against the surface just to get any excess air bubbles out. You can kind of see a pattern going in there. What I'm going to do is take some paper towel and soak that up. First pass I usually do with paper towel, and then I'll go back over it with toilet paper, because toilet paper does a great job of soaking it up. I need to move my garbage can closer. I really hope the mica comes through on this. Piece I did last night like this is in the kiln now. I did notice I had my base glass was cut a little too big for the piece that I did, the slurry. So I added a border, and I noticed my powder piece was pulling in. So I've actually gone a little higher with my temp and gonna hold it a little longer to hopefully kind of push that back out toward the edge. And I'll get pictures of that one and share as well. But for now, I'm getting to where I've got a lot of the excess out of here. I do want some moisture in there, because otherwise it's probably not going to do well in the freezer. But now is when I just kind of go back over it with toilet paper. I kind of want this consistency to look like wet sand, where you can see the sparkles. You don't want it totally dry. And when I froze the piece last night, I froze it for exactly an hour, and it seemed to work really well. My watch is reminding me it's time to drink some water. So this one is looking good. I'm going to set it aside. I'm actually going to leave it sit on this cardboard just so it doesn't collapse, although these molds are a little stiffer than the silicone ones. So now I'm going to take the one for the red, green. I think I'm going to use red, green, and white in this one, and I'm going to put it in the holly mold. I'm not going to use any mica, although some gold would be pretty. But I'm going to mix them up, and I'll get all that done off camera, and then when I come back we'll fill this mold. Alright, so we're back. I'm back. I have mixed up my powders and water, and most of them have settled already. I think how I'm going to put these in this time is I'm going to do a little red, a little green, probably some white between them, because reds and greens can react, just because reds are sulfur based, greens are copper based. I didn't look on the reaction chart to see where these fell. I know aventurine does not, so one of these, this one's aventurine green. I have a dark green, I have a flame opal, and I have a cherry red transparent, and then I have my white opal. So my biggest amount, again, I used 100 grams of white for this one. I'm shooting for 200 total in here, 4x8 piece. So I've got 100 grams of white, and then I've got 25 each of my reds and greens. So as you can see, I'll have to continue to mix those. This one is my flame opal. Move this forward just so it's a little more visible in camera frame. This one might actually be a bit on the runny side, so I'm actually going to let that one sit aside. And I am going to find a container pour my excess in. So again, after it sits for a little bit, you can just pour some of that water off. And because we're doing this in a container, it can either be, it can be runnier, but then your colors are all going to run together right away. But you could also have it a little thicker, just plop it in like we did last time and then add more water. So again, this piece is going to be fused on the texture mold that's hollies and berries. I'm not worried about getting reds where berries are and greens where leaves are. It's just, I'm really just shooting to make a piece with these colors in it. It's a great way to make your own art glass too. Alright, so there's my flame opal. I know there's still some left in there. Pour off a little water. Actually, I'm going to let that one sit. I'm going to add some green. So this one is the dark green. I can already tell I've got too much in there. And then I just didn't do what I said I was going to do. I was going to put white in between my red and green. I'm also watching my kiln. I see it's just hitting its fuse temp. It's about to go into hold mode. Yep, and it just did. So I'll be checking on that shortly. You can see there's not anything super scientific here. I'm just dropping it in. Put some in the corners. You don't need to add all of it at once. I know why these got to be so popular. I think it was last year when people started doing them. They're just fun. And I'm just changing it up a little bit by doing the freeze method. Yeah, this one's still a bit runny. But you know what, we're going to just go for it. And yes, I know that's touching some red, but we'll see what happens. sure I get some aventurine green on the surface. It's such a pretty color when it's fired. Can't really tell that's what it is when it's in powder or in slurry form, but all right. More white. You can literally drop them into each other, the colors. Like the one I did earlier, you can pull through it and rake it somewhat. I'd have gone a little heavy with the white on this one, but I still think it's going to turn out looking pretty cool. Alright, this one is my flame opal. This one I am going to make a few little voids here and there and just pour it in. So this actually is a little runnier than what I usually do, but as we did with the last one, we will soak some up. When it is runnier, you can mix. Now see how I'm getting a really icky color there? That's because you start getting the colors mixed together and you're going to get a brown blob. Still have a little bit of this green, the aventurine. Again, I stress don't waste your leftovers, let them dry out. If you're not going to do another slurry, they'll turn into powder again. And these cups are great. These are just little dollar store cups. I think I got them at, I want to say Dollar Tree. There's one in town. So now I'm just going to drop what I got left of my white in here, and I just mixed my green in there too. Alright. I was thinking I could get a mirror and show what that looks like on the underside. I do this sometimes when I'm working with like a strip piece, a strip construction, or if I'm building something where I'm going to fire it and flip it over. If you get a mirror out, you can see what it looks like. So hopefully you can see under there. Got a nice little marbled pattern going. Could probably spray this and move it even more. Again, you don't really want to mix your colors. Here's an idea. How about we take and put this on a glass? It'd work better if I had a clean one, but now see that we can see what's happening underneath. Hopefully you can see. It does really help to have this over a mirror because I can see what I'm mixing. Make sure I don't overdo it anywhere. Don't need an ugly brown, not that brown is ugly, but when you're shooting for red and green, may not be able to see this under the camera. I'll turn it. This is really, I guess this would be cold raking, huh? I'm sure there's an actual process that is named for that isn't this, but it's more or less like raking, but it's not in the kiln to do so. Alright. Hopefully you can see that. Let's lift it up. Give you a peek over the mirror. See, that's got quite the design going. So now, like I did with the blue one, I'm going to start soaking the water off of it. Because I am freezing it again, I don't want any big air pockets or bubbles. First couple are going to soak right up. Actually, I might go a couple layers just so I don't start dragging colors into each other on this side. No, I'm not just throwing this on the floor. I do have a garbage can behind me. See, we're almost to a point where we just want to use tissue now. And you can see there's if you do tap this like this, you can see there's a pretty nice consistency, so it's the same thickness about. Kind of reminds me of candy, being the holiday season. Alright, now we're going to take some toilet tissue. And like I mentioned on the last one, you don't want to get all your moisture out because you are going to freeze this and you want it to freeze together. It's the whole point. And if you've not done slurry before and you're wondering why freeze it, you don't have to. But again, I found this method is easier cleanup. I mean, I've got it all contained, mostly contained, and I'll just flip this out onto my glass once it's out of the freezer. So I have these two that I'm going to slide onto the cardboard here. And at this point, they look pretty good. They're ready to freeze. I'm going to take these up to the freezer, and in 1 hour I will pop them out onto the base glass and show you what we've got. I'm really hoping that the mica comes out with this blue one, but then we're going to pop them onto the texture molds that I have here. So when I come back, we'll be ready to unfreeze. Ready to thaw? Thanks. I have frozen the two pieces. They look like this. And I realized, as I told you I wanted the mica down, that on my snowflake one, I'm actually going to try it with the slurry side down and not the sheet glass side. I was looking at the two sides. Again, this one has the mica, so that's what I'm going to want down. I really hope this pops out as nice as the one did last night. And I'm probably going to do this onto the cardboard and then flip it. Silicone mold did work a lot better. There we go. You can see that my mica is on there still. I'm very carefully going to, this is one reason I'm using paper too. Just makes it easier for handling. If you've done freeze infuse, you know there's a very limited amount of touching you can do with that. But that one's ready to go other than the sheet glass on top. Normally I would have my sheet glass on the bottom, which is what I'll do with the other piece, but this will be a good test to see how this works. And I don't anticipate any issues. So there's the snowflake one ready to go. set that over on another table just so it's in a safe spot. This one I have put down a piece of paper only because I've had some issues with this mold before, and when I did use paper on it like I do with luminescent, it worked fine. So same thing. This one, here's this side. I really kind of want this on the bottom, so I want this prettier side to be glassed down onto the texture design. So hopefully it hasn't thawed too much. Here we go, perfect. I'm going to take my sheet glass, work very quickly. I found the spot that I wanted on this mold. Should have had some gloves on so I wasn't touching that. Looks like it hangs over a little bit on my sheet glass, just like that one. The sheet glass is a little smaller, and I'm not too worried about it. I think it's going to be fine. So that is my freeze infuse slurry ready for the kiln. One is in the kiln now, annealing, and I will put some video in here with that. I took some pictures while it was cooling down, but I will definitely update this and get the pictures of the finished products out, or at least once they're done with their fuse, before I actually upload this entire video. So thanks again for watching. I hope this is helpful, and I look forward to seeing what other folks make. Thanks. Well, it's the next morning and I've taken this piece out of the kiln. I wish I would have just cut my base glass smaller, because when it pulled in it did leave a little bit of a gap, you can see, between where I tried adding a frit border and the slurry part. So lesson learned there, but in general the fuse turned out really well. Still wish I would have used this side on the snowflake side. I really like the look. Definitely has that pot melt look, without the super high temp. So that is the first attempt at the slurry that was frozen and then put on a texture mold. I have two more in the kiln now, and those are the ones I demonstrated earlier, yesterday actually, so we'll see how those turn out. Here's what the mold looks like. Sorry, still waking up. Haven't had my coffee yet. When I pulled it off the mold, it did pull paper up with it, but this mold I don't believe I've ever treated. I think I've only been using it with paper, mostly because I've been using the luminescent on it. But this time I just thought, you know what, paper's easier to clean up. So there is still paper around the edges. There was paper on this. I just spritzed it with a water bottle to wipe it off and then rinse the piece. But yeah, in general, I think it turned out. So thanks for watching, and if you do one of these, I'd like to see how yours turns out as well. So keep me posted. Thanks, and have a great day.